Hello and welcome back to the Craft Mansion. I'm David and this is something I've been wanting to do for the past 2 years. Multiple requests to do more wands from the Fantastic Beasts movie. And because of these requests, I will give the people what they want. As you can tell from the title of this video, I will be doing the wands of Dumbledore, the first one, Leta Lestrange, and Nicolas Flamel. These are all characters which have been seen only in the second movie, unless you count the small photograph of Leta Lestrange in Newt's suitcase zoo thingy. This is actually my 7th video about wands. I've made quite a lot of them. There's this playlist over here with other Harry Potter props. You can see some of the ones back here, and if you've seen my previous videos, then, well, you know the process where I start with a wooden core, and then I add some details with clay and this time with some other materials as well, besides clay. I'm starting off with the printed image of the wands, and this is Nicolas Flamel's wand, which is 35 centimeters long. Then Leta Lestrange has the same length for a wand, and Dumbledore's wand is a bit longer at about 39 centimeters, and I'm really looking forward to do this one because of the twirly thing in the middle over here. Yes, ever since I've moved into the new room, I've put a plant in the studio. I went through various dowels and broomsticks and picked 3 which were as close to the thicknesses I wanted to start with when making these wands. So, Dumbledore's wand. I used a 2.4 cm thick broomstick and measured the length of the wand image minus the last bit at the pommel over there. The next step was transferring a 2D image onto a 3D object. While looking from straight up, I had to roughly draw lines where the border should be. I did this process on 2 opposing sides. The handle was left out for the moment. I modified another image for that, removing about half a millimeter from the black section and leaving only a small square where the pommel could fit. There was a lot of wood to remove, and I removed the largest chunks with a table saw. I continued shaving off more wood using craft knives. Once it was flat enough, I copied the thin part of the wand onto the other 2 sides of the wood. For the thicker spiral part, I couldn't use the same image, so I found one of the matching angle online and copied this instead. I'd suggest removing previous markings because, as you can see, it becomes difficult to identify which ones are new. Where it was possible, I used a driller to make the center holes. Now, I didn't always manage to match the hole from both sides, but it was a start. This is where the hard work began. I had to visualize the spirals and try to plan which wood wasn't needed. I used as many images as possible to get the different angles. Up till now, the wand dimensions were quite squarish, so I moved on to the rounding out of the sharper edges. Yeah, not all holes were quite aligned. So in these cases, I simply filled in the holes with white glue and toothpicks and just cut off the excess. I also had to fix an area where I cut too deep with the table saw and used scrap pieces of wood to do so. For further details and refining, I used a Dremel tool. There are 4 runes on the handle, 2 F things, one that looks like a small N, and another with like 2 V's. For the black part, I carved shallow lines into the wood with a variety of lengths. I had to change my t-shirt just because wand work gets very dusty and I didn't want to ruin the good t-shirt. I mean, just look at that mess. Now moving on to the handle of this particular wand, it's sort of wrapped in leather, and to create that illusion of leather, I'm going to try and use the scrubber tubing. This is a type of tubing where you put it over joint wires usually and then use a heat gun and it shrinks. Now the idea behind this is that there's these lines, this pattern on the handle which I already made into the wood, and when this thing goes over the wood and it shrinks, it should take the same shape I have here. The tubing was a bit too narrow and I didn't have any larger ones, so I stretched it a bit using 2 scrap pieces of wood. The lines didn't really show up, so I used a blunt edge to create new ones onto the rubber while it was still warm. As I said at the start of the video, I will be using clay for some of the details, and this is air drying clay. I've got the tools here, so now we can start in building the pommel of this wand. When measuring the broomstick, I left that last bit of the pommel out. This piece was made using thick cardboard. I drew a circle with a diameter of 1.9 centimeters. I drew on this rune and then cut it out. I glued it in the correct orientation with super glue. The pommel should be a metal, so to make the surface smoother, I sealed it with Mod Podge. Moving on, Leta Lestrange's wand. I started with a 1.6 thick dowel and measured the whole length of the image. I taped the image down and proceeded to transferring the outline onto the dowel. This wand has a uniform profile, so I reused the same image. I used the image to measure the angle of the spirals and then connected the lines as best as I could. The handle has this intricate design, and while I couldn't put as much detail as there is on the original prop, I loosely created the loops and twirls without any particular pattern. Then I followed this design and used a wood burner to remove the negative areas. I sealed the areas which were going to be silver with Mod Podge. And finally, Nicolas Flamel. This broomstick is 2 centimeters thick. I changed the end design quite a bit for the inner wooden core, so I did not need the whole length of the image. The rest of the wand was copied as is, but here at the end I only needed a core onto which the clay would go. copying the outline again from the other angle, I put the clay support in the middle rather than to one side. Also has a pattern on the handle, but I went about creating it differently. I covered the area with tape and then copied as much as I could of the patterns onto the tape. Once I completely removed it from the wood, it could act as a template. I said once, "'cause it took forever." I put the tape flat on paper and was going to try and cut out every single piece, until I realized that that would have been a lot of work. So I just put the template over cardstock and just pressed down hard on the lines to leave marks on the cardstock. Although not as clear on camera, these markings led me to drawing up the shapes again. I carefully cut them, added super glue, and proceeded to gluing them in the right place. This area would later be painted gold, so I sealed it with Mod Podge. Then I moved on to the clay. While this area isn't a metal, the wood is a bit shinier, so I added Mod Podge as well. The wand building is now all finished, so now that's left is arguably the best part about some of these ones, the painting. Now Leta Lestrange's wand and Dumbledore's wands, these are just black and silver, while I'm just checking my notes. Nicolas Flamel's wand has some gold and some more earthly colors like brown. And that is another wand episode finished. Now, some personal thoughts I had while making these wands was primarily the clay. Every time I work with clay, I'm worried that it won't come out great. I mean, I made Lucius's wand, and that's far more difficult than this one, and yet I was still worried. And that's because usually clay is a bit too soft to work with. I mean, it's clay. And then I realized I have a trick, and that's where I make the general shape first, then I let it dry for a bit and continue smoothing out the surfaces and removing any large chunks of clay. And then when it's completely dry, I usually do the small details like these ones over here. Clay usually works best when you try to fake wood. When I tried to fake metal, it isn't as perfect. Since it's not as smooth as metal, yeah, those mistakes surely come out in the end. But since I cannot shape metal, this is the next best thing. If you don't have rubber tubing like this, you can just make the pattern and then paint the handle black. It should work as well. By the way, this spiral gave me a hard time. I mean, these two fingers were red for about 2 days because, yeah, a lot of work went into this. It's not as close to the original prop as my usual props are, but it's still good enough for me. Coming on to this spiral, I think it's my best one yet. Yeah, it's very smooth, so I'm really proud of it, and especially these details as well. Of course, these are just 3 wands. If you have more wand suggestions, well, I have other videos about wands, but if you have more suggestions of wands I haven't already made, please leave them down in the comments below. And while you're down below, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and to ring the notification bell if you haven't already. If you haven't subscribed, Accio subscribe button. Here is the subscribe button. Accio videos. These are some more videos from my channel, and until next time, this is Leta Lestrange's wand, this is Dumbledore's wand, and this is Nicolas Flamel's wand. I'm David, and this is the Craft Mansion.